Tess Durbeyfield's story begins in a world of green fields and quiet country lanes. A place where fate was just waiting for the right moment to step in. She was young, with a natural beauty she hardly seemed aware of, and she carried a sense of responsibility far beyond her years. Her life was simple, almost predictable, until one single evening changed everything. It was a May night, alive with village celebration. Tess, graceful and vibrant, led the dance under the soft glow of lanterns. She seemed untouched by any darkness then, completely unaware that her own steps were already leading her straight toward it. On her way home, she met a traveling parson who casually shared a piece of family history she'd never known. The Durbeyfields, he told her, were descendants of the ancient and noble d'Urberville family. This news hit her father, John Durbeyfield, like a potent drink, filled with a sudden, intoxicating pride. He abandoned his work and lost himself in daydreams of forgotten greatness and noble blood. But for Tess, this revelation brought no joy. It felt like an invisible weight pressing down on her. That very night, responsibility landed squarely in her hands. Her father, too drunk to work, couldn't take the family's beehives to market. Feeling a deep sense of guilt and desperate to fix the situation, Tess insisted on doing it herself. Before dawn, she set out with her little brother, Abraham, guiding their family horse, Prince, along the dark, narrow roads. And then, in a silent, swift moment, fate struck. A speeding mail cart appeared out of the blackness. Unstoppable, Prince was hit and killed instantly, his blood pooling on the road. Tess stood frozen, pure horror blooming inside her as the reality sank in. The horse wasn't just an animal, it was their family's livelihood. His death was a devastating blow. Guilt completely consumed her, even though no one blamed her. Tess felt the weight of her family's ruin on her shoulders, with the quiet, harsh judgment that only the innocent can have. She believed she had to be the one to make things right. So, when her parents heard about some wealthy relatives with the old d'Urberville name living nearby, Tess didn't argue when they suggested she go ask for help. She saw this journey as her penance, a way to atone for the tragedy. And so, Tess traveled to the estate called Trantridge. It was nothing like her home. It was grander, heavier, and felt artificial. The d'Urbervilles she met weren't the ancient nobles from history books. They were a family who had simply bought the name, not inherited it. But they had wealth, and wealth meant power. It was here that Tess met Alec d'Urberville. From the very first moment, something about him felt wrong. He was overly confident, and his gaze lingered on her in a way that made her deeply uncomfortable. He admired her too openly, with a strange familiarity that felt invasive. She felt exposed, as if he saw her not as a person, but as something to be possessed. Alec offered her strawberries, flowers, and compliments she never asked for. Tess accepted them reluctantly, trying not to cause offense, but unsure how to handle his constant attention. She was grateful for the job he gave her, tending to poultry on the estate, but every kindness he showed seemed to come with an unspoken expectation. The atmosphere at Trantridge was suffocating. Tess tried her best to stay reserved and focused on her work, but Alec's presence was inescapable. His words echoed in her mind, and his looks unsettled her spirit. She sensed a danger she couldn't quite name, feeling lost and unprotected in this unfamiliar place. One night, exhausted and confused, her strength finally gave out. Events unfolded that were beyond her control, beyond her ability to resist or even fully comprehend. What happened in that moment changed her forever, in ways no words could ever fix. When Tess finally returned home, she brought a heavy silence with her. The familiar country lanes no longer offered any comfort. Her family welcomed her back, but the world itself felt different, as if a curtain had fallen between her and the life she once knew. In time, Tess gave birth to a child, a little boy she named Sorrow. For a short while, her entire world shrank to caring for this fragile life. She loved him with a powerful depth, a love born from her own loss and endurance. But the baby was weak, and he didn't live for long. The local church refused to give him a proper baptism, So Tess did it herself, whispering prayers with a quiet, determined resolve. When he passed away, she buried him with a simple dignity, marking his small grave with flowers, a symbol of hope instead of bitterness. After this, Tess knew she couldn't stay in a place where her past defined her every move. She decided to seek honest work somewhere new, somewhere no one knew her story. Leaving home once more, she traveled to Talbotha's Dairy, a place of open fields and steady, rhythmic labor, surrounded by the simple beauty of nature and the routine of milking. Tess began to find a small measure of peace. The air was gentle, the work was fair, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt a sense of calm. Among the other workers, she met Angel Clare, a young man who was different from anyone she had known before. He was quiet and observant, with an air of thoughtful independence. Tess noticed him, but she didn't seek his attention. For now, she was content to just exist, to work and to heal, without being scrutinized or judged. It felt like a new beginning, a fragile chance to simply be. Life at Talbotha's Dairy was a gentle dream. After all the turmoil Tess had endured, the steady rhythm of work felt like a balm to her soul. The air was clean, the fields vibrant, and the morning mist rose from the meadows like a soft, white blanket. Here, she found comfort in routine, in the simple, honest labor of milking cows alongside the other dairy maids, Marion, Iz, and Reddy. Each of them carried their own quiet hopes, but soon, all their gazes, including Tess's, turned to one man, Angel Clare. Angel wasn't like any man Tess had met before. He was the son of a clergyman, educated and thoughtful, yet he had turned his back on a life of privilege to learn the trade of farming. He worked alongside the dairy hands without a hint of arrogance, and from the very beginning, his attention settled on Tess. It wasn't a sudden or aggressive pursuit. He simply watched her, drawn to her natural grace, her skill, and the quiet dignity she carried. Tess felt his gaze, and a mix of warmth and fear bloomed within her. She'd learned to be wary of admiration, knowing how quickly it could sour. The other dairy maids saw it too. Marion, good-natured and strong, laughed it off. Iz, the observant one, accepted it with a quiet sadness. But young Reddy, sensitive and frail, was heartbroken and silence. Tess, acutely aware of their feelings, tried to keep her distance from Angel. It felt wrong to build her happiness on their disappointment, or worse, on the secret past she kept hidden. But Angel was gently persistent. They began to walk together through the fields at dusk, their conversations weaving through books, beliefs, and the meaning of a life lived freely. He treated her as an equal, a mind to be engaged with, not just a pretty face. This was more unsettling to Tess than Alec d'Urberville's crude advances had ever been. Alec had made her feel trapped, Angel made her feel seen. And that was the real danger. Soon, Angel began to speak of love, of marriage, of a future built together. Tess resisted, telling him she was unworthy, that he didn't truly know her. But her reluctance only fueled his determination. To him, her hesitation wasn't a warning. It was a sign of her pure and humble nature. Desperate, Tess tried to confess. She wrote letters detailing her past, only to lose her nerve and tear them up. One night, in a final, frantic attempt at honesty, she wrote everything down and slipped the letter under his bedroom door. She felt a wave of relief, believing she had finally done what was right, but fate had other plans. The letter slid unseen, lost beneath the edge of the carpet, and Angel never found it. Worn down by his persistence and her own deep yearning for love and peace, Tess finally said yes. They were married in a quiet ceremony, and for a fleeting moment, true happiness seemed within her grasp. The joy was real, but it was fragile, constantly shadowed by the anxiety of the secret she still carried. On their wedding night, in a moment of vulnerability, Angel confessed first. He told her of a past affair, a brief, foolish mistake from his youth. He expected her to be shocked, but Tess offered him only forgiveness and understanding. Her gentle response solidified his image of her as a perfect, pure being. Then, it was her turn. Taking a deep breath, Tess told him everything. The words came out slowly, painfully, each one dismantling the beautiful life they had just begun to build. She spoke of Trantridge, of Alec, of the baby she had loved and lost. She made no excuses. She only offered the raw, unvarnished truth. Angel listened in absolute silence. The warmth in his eyes died. The man who had so easily forgiven himself for his own past transgression could not find an ounce of that same mercy for the woman he loved. His idealized image of Tess shattered, and he couldn't cope with the reality of the wrong, suffering woman before him. He spoke of principles, of his disillusionment. Tess didn't plead for a pardon, only for him to understand that she was a victim, not a sinner. But Angel's love had been built on an illusion, and without it, it crumbled into dust. Though they were still husband and wife, a vast, cold ocean now separated them. Within days, Angel made his decision. He would leave for Brazil to escape. He arranged for Tess to have money, but he denied her the one thing she needed, his companionship, his love. With a quiet despair, Tess accepted his judgment. She had always been a survivor, and she believed endurance was her only path forward. As Angel sailed away, Tess returned to her family, her heart heavy with yet another profound loss. Life snapped back to its harsh, unforgiving rhythm. She took on grueling farm labor wherever she could find it, her body aching from the work, her spirit weighed down by sorrow. The winter closed in, turning the fields barren and gray, and Tess's own heart hardened into a state of pure endurance. Separated by an ocean, she remained faithful to Angel in her thoughts, clinging to the belief in his essential goodness even as her own life narrowed into a relentless, lonely struggle for survival. After Angel Clare sailed away, Tess's world shrank to a single, relentless struggle, survival. She went back to her parents, not as a heartbroken bride, but as a woman bracing for whatever hardship came next. The money Angel promised was never enough, and rarely on time. Tess refused to wait for it. She believed in work, in the quiet dignity of earning her keep, even when the work itself was crushing. And crush her it did. She found a job at a farm called Flint Camash, a name that perfectly described the place. It was a bleak, unforgiving landscape where the soil was like stone and the wind cut right through you. The people who worked there weren't there by choice. They were there because they had no other options. Tess labored alongside them, her body growing thinner, her spirit worn down by the sheer grind and the profound loneliness. At Flint Camash, there was no beauty to distract from the pain. Just long days of back-breaking work and cold, empty nights. Her hands, once soft, became rough and calloused. Her strength faded, but she never complained. She just endured, believing that suffering was simply her lot in life. All the while, Angel was a constant, aching presence in her mind. She wrote him letters, gentle, patient letters filled with a quiet hope. She never blamed him, never demanded he come back, just asked him to think of her sometimes. But most of her letters vanished into silence. Angel, struggling with his own failures and illness in a foreign land, remained distant, a prisoner of his own rigid ideals and regrets. It was during this desperate time that a ghost from her past reappeared, Alec d'Herberville. At first, he seemed changed. He dressed plainly and spoke with the fire of a recent religious convert. He claimed he had found God, that he had renounced his old, predatory ways. Tess met him with a sense of dread. His presence brought back all the memories she had fought so hard to bury, and his sudden piety felt unstable, not genuine. Alec preached about repentance and salvation, but beneath the holy words, Tess sensed the same old selfish desires. His obsession with her hadn't disappeared. It had just put on a new costume. He started following her, cornering her, offering help she never asked for. Tess refused him, firmly and repeatedly. She reminded him of the life he had destroyed. Alec's religious act began to crack. His enthusiasm turned to frustration, and his frustration quickly curdled back into raw desire. He started blaming Angel for abandoning her, questioning her loyalty to a man who had so easily cast her aside. Tess held her ground for as long as she could, but then her world collapsed. Her father died unexpectedly, and with his death, the family lost their home. Suddenly, Tess was responsible for her mother and younger siblings, who were now facing homelessness and starvation. Every burden, every fear, fell squarely on her shoulders, and that's when Alec returned. Timing his arrival for her absolute weakest moment, he didn't offer love or tenderness. He offered a deal. He offered security, food, a roof over their heads, protection for her family. Tess fought against it with every ounce of her moral strength, but reality was closing in. With Angel gone, society indifferent, and her family's survival on the line, her resistance crumbled. She gave in. This time, there were no illusions, no tricks. She yielded out of pure exhaustion and despair, hating herself for it. She became Alec's companion once more, feeling as though the last spark of hope inside her had been extinguished. Life became a hollow, mechanical routine, stripped of all meaning. She didn't love him, she simply endured him. And then, Angel came back. His time abroad, filled with sickness and failure, had broken him down, and in doing so, had broken open his heart. His rigid beliefs had softened. Remorse had finally taken root. He returned to England a humbled man, ready to forgive, ready to accept Tess for who she was, not who he wanted her to be. He went to find her, his heart full of repentance. But he was too late. When Angel learned that Tess was living with Alec, the full weight of his mistake crashed down on him. He found her, begging for a second chance, offering the love and devotion he should have given her from the start. Tess listened in silence, the sight of him tearing open wounds that had never truly healed. She told him everything, not with anger, but with a flat, soul-crushing despair. She explained how her family's desperation and his abandonment had left her with no choice. Angel finally understood the depth of his own guilt. He pleaded with her to leave Alec, to run away with him. Tess was torn, caught between the love for Angel that still lingered and a sense of total hopelessness. When she went back and told Alec she was leaving, he was cruel. He mocked her, reminded her of how dependent she was, and laughed at Angel's sudden change of heart. And in that moment, something inside Tess finally snapped. After years of injustice, suffering, and silence, a terrible clarity took hold. Alec's life ended at her hand. It wasn't an act of passion, but a final, chilling release. She fled and found Angel, telling him what she had done with a calm acceptance. For a few brief, stolen days, they were together. They moved through the countryside like ghosts, and for the first time in a long time, Tess felt a sense of peace. She was loved without judgment, free from fear. They found their way to the ancient, silent circle of Stonehenge. There, as dawn approached, Tess lay down on one of the great stones, utterly exhausted. She told Angel she was ready. The immense weight she had carried her entire life had finally been lifted. When the authorities arrived, she didn't fight. She was taken away, and Angel could only watch, helpless, as the society that had ignored her suffering now moved to punish her for it. Tess faced her end with a quiet dignity. At Winchester Prison, a black flag was raised, signaling that justice, in its cold and final form, had been served. Angel was left to walk away with Tess's younger sister, Lisa Lou, a girl who mirrored Tess in her gentleness. But Tess herself was gone. She wasn't a sinner or a saint. She was simply a good woman, a pure woman, crushed by circumstances, by bad timing, and by a world that demanded purity but offered no mercy. Thanks for watching. If you want to explore more stories that challenge and move us, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.